being back in stage 3 load shedding. We were really super excited to not have load shedding this evening. And then boom, out of nowhere, no power. So thanks for being with us. We know that we are running a little bit late. For anybody who's joining us on the Zoom link, please pop your questions in the Q&A section. Alternatively, if you're listening to us on Facebook, please pop your comments, etc., in the comment section. We'd love to engage with you tonight. So Miss, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hey, welcome everyone to the last webinar of our Interstitial Pulmonary Fibrosis series. Tonight, Kelly and I will be discussing meeting the unmet needs of our patients. So without further ado, we will get started. So we're going to be starting off just with a basic overview of IPF. So Carl, can you take us through the symptoms that patients will be experiencing? No, wait, let me take you back.
No, it's okay. So I think, gosh, how I'm feeling today, I'm really, I think I've had a very, very rough day from a coughing perspective. And ironically, that is one of the, the kind of the most evident symptoms that all the patients that we have spoken to kind of recognize as being, one of the first things that they've noticed. And I sincerely hope that I get through it. I am sucking on a Strepsil, so I hope that I get through today without too much coughing. But essentially, IPF stands for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is obviously, as we know, a rare condition, and that affects approximately 100,000 people every year. Fibrosis, for those who don't know, and I think that this is an important thing for people who are listening on the general Facebook page to kind of be aware of. Fibrosis, for people who don't know, is actually the term for the buildup of scar tissue. So in someone with IPF, the lungs become quite scarred and thickened and almost stiff. I'm trying to give an example for anybody who's ever battled with keloids or anything like that. Or generally speaking, where I think if anyone's got a dog, it's something I've always noticed, the scar tissue from my dog's spay cut becomes quite hard and stiff, and it's almost inflexible. So that is essentially fibrosis. And in people with IPF, the lungs are thick and stiff like that, which obviously makes it much harder for patients to breathe, because oxygen to enter into the lungs obviously needs a fair amount of flexibility. So the fact that it's idiopathic refers to the fact that the cause of the scarring is unknown. So that's what idiopathic means. It means that it has an unknown cause. So the common symptoms generally relate to cough, and people with IPF often report that it's a bothersome cough as an early symptom, and the cough is usually quite dry, and it almost can be noticed after a chest infection that doesn't improve. Other people say that they get this continuous throat irritation and an intermittent cough, and that is also something that's obviously quite important to follow up. So coughing as a routine thing is not normal for anybody. And if you find that you've got this debilitating cough that results in coughing fits and often episodes of breathlessness, then it is definitely something that you should have investigated with your clinician. And another very, very important symptom that many patients report is that of fatigue. And it's the tiredness and breathlessness because of the exertion. So very, very often it's difficult to tell the difference between just being tired and breathless. But people living with IPF often describe days where they have like a complete total lack of energy and they feel completely exhausted. And, people might find that fatigue is associated with a mild loss of appetite and losing weight without trying. And that is definitely something to follow up.
I think,
sorry, Miss. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I think the fact that it's so unpredictable must be so frustrating for a patient, because you're having such a great day and the next day you wake up and your symptoms have just gotten to you again. It must be a very frustrating condition to have to deal with.
I think you're probably right. I think it not being consistent and you having the good days and the bad days makes it very, very difficult to plan. And it also makes it quite frustrating from a patient perspective, to continuously have to to deal with the ever-changing environment. And I think I seriously sympathize with patients who are battling these kind of chest conditions, because I think if COVID taught us anything, is that continuously coughing is really not fun, and that feeling of continuously being breathless is not pleasant either.
Yeah, I think at the moment you can relate.
Like legit, I'm going through the symptoms and I'm like, this is exactly what I'm kind of feeling like at the moment. But I'm pretty sure that mine is more of a bronchitis.
Yes, absolutely. So
So
here we
then,
have a,
yeah, carry on.
sorry. No, I was just going to say a quick tip that we have for the patients today is to keep a diary of your symptoms to track how you feel over time, and also make a note of any questions and be sure to share your symptoms with your doctor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Carl, can you elaborate on that?
No, I think so. Symptom management is so important because doctors physically don't, they're not with you all the time. And realistically speaking, when you go visit when you go for your follow-ups, you might see your doctor every 3 months, 6 months, every year. When you go for those follow-ups and they ask you how you've been, you can really only have like memory of the last kind of 2 weeks. So if it's been a bad 2 weeks, and generally that's what happens, is you've had like a really off couple of weeks and then you phone for a follow-up. So you don't necessarily reiterate an accurate depiction of how you've been over the extended period. So tracking your symptoms is so important, even if you jot them down in a book, if you keep notes on your phone. But honestly, monitor the cough, monitor the breathlessness, monitor the, if you've battled with exercise, or if there's anything that you picked up on that particular day that's out the ordinary for you. And it's also very, very important for patients to manage their fatigue as well. So, plan ahead, make sure that you've allowed yourself enough time to rest if needed. If you've got like really hectic things planned, try to split them up into, smaller bite-sized chunks to allow your body to rest in between. And when your body needs rest, it needs rest. So give into that. And I also think it's an important element in terms of communicating with your friends, family, and colleagues in terms of what your limitations are, so that they understand and that you don't, kind of push through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we move on to diagnosis? Because as we know, dealing with rare diseases, diagnosis is obviously often the biggest issue that we have. Diagnosing patients can be so difficult, and from what I understand, IPF is no different.
No. So I think one of the things is because it shares so many symptoms with many other conditions, the diagnosis may take a long time. And, it can be very, very frustrating for patients. And generally, a lot of the patients diagnosed with chronic lung conditions like COPD, IPF, etc., can be elderly. So you're anticipating that those individuals would kind of be slowing down in terms of activity, in terms of health, and all of that. So I think that kind of re-amplifies the issues around actually getting a diagnosis. It's important to know that often many people go through a variety of different tests before being diagnosed with IPF. And, while medical teams are looking for ways to shorten that diagnostic period, I think it's a very, very frustrating thing for patients, because someone recommends that you do a test and might come back negative. You're still feeling sick. You're kind of getting a little bit worse. You go back, you see another doctor, they recommend something else. But it's important to persevere, because for you to be treated appropriately, you need to obviously have a confirmation and diagnosis. So if you're one of these patients that continuously has a hectic cough that just doesn't want to go away, you're continuously battling with fatigue, blue around the mouth, one of the other things is these like squishy fingers. So many patients with chronic lung conditions, almost like your finger pads are quite soft and juicy, if I can call them that, like spongy. If you're experiencing any of those symptoms, it's important to go get it checked out, and obviously to see the course through.
Yes, that's so interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, very interesting. It's called finger clubbing, and it's actually finger clubbing.
Finger clubbing.
Yeah, so it's a widening and the roundening of the tips of the fingers and the toes with almost like a spongy sensation. And that's something that, crops up quite often for health conditions, well, specifically related to lungs. And then blueness around the mouth. And I think people think when
Of course,
you're
because of the
deprived of oxygen that you'll be like overly blue. Some
Yes.
patients who have got really, really low oxygen levels, I mean, you can see from a mile away that they are blue. But sometimes it just looks like almost like a purple stain. Like when you've maybe had too much red wine or when your lips get a little bit of a permanent stain. Like sometimes it's not obviously like that noticeable. But if you're having that alongside, the continuous coughing and the fatigue and the scratchy throat and all of that, then it does certainly have it checked out.
And in terms of tracking symptoms.
Yeah. So again, I can't stress this enough. Not only for patients with chronic lung conditions, but for any patients, if you are diagnosed, if you're undiagnosed, it's irrelevant. It's so important because your doctors need to be able to have a bird's eye view of exactly what's happened, between appointments. And sometimes in the rare disease space, it's the smallest little new symptom that crops up that completes the puzzle for someone who's investigating you. So always make sure that you do whatever's necessary in terms of monitoring your symptoms. Make sure that you go back for your follow-up appointments. It's critical. And obviously changes in your symptoms can often indicate that your treatment is worse, that your disease is worsening and that your treatment needs to be adjusted. So you might need dose adjustments, you might need to add on more therapies, you might need to go for pulmonary rehabilitation or implement oxygen or something like that. So to continuously go back, go through your follow-up appointments, make sure that you've done all of that stuff is really, really important. I'd suggest keeping a diary, and that's what I do for my son. I've got a diary, and regardless of how immaterial it might seem, if he's off his food, he doesn't want to eat, if he's complaining of a big sore toe, whatever it is, I put it in there because you just never know when it can become relevant. And then
absolutely.
In terms of the pulmonary fibrosis patients in particular, things that can indicate that there's a worsening of the treatment, the worsening of the symptoms are obviously the shortness of breath getting worse, particularly with activity, a cough that doesn't get any better, the tiredness and generally feeling unwell, gradual unintended weight loss, and the rapid shallow breathing.
Are you there?
I am. Did you lose me?
Yeah, I lost.
Oh no, sorry. It is probably
for a second, but you're back now.
Perfect. It is probably because of the load shedding. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So we're done with tracking symptoms, keeping a diary. I can imagine keeping a diary is super helpful because day to day, you always forget you never remember the small things. So quick tip. Carla, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So remember to bring your tracker with you to your next appointment. Symptom monitoring is a powerful tool helping you have informed discussions with your doctor and treatment team. So I think we've elaborated on just how important the diary is at this point.
But also to take it with to your appointment, because
yes,
you'll be surprised how often we forget. I mean, it's like taking your dog for vaccinations. You always forget the vaccine card.
So true. So now in terms of treatments, not much. I'm very unaware of what is available for patients. I know that patients in the past were put on steroids, but now that's not a treatment option anymore. So can you talk us through the different treatment options that are available for our patients now?
So I think the steroid it's not that it's no longer a treatment option. I just think it's not that there are more advanced options now. Okay. One of the latest things is obviously the antifibrotic medicines. And that's available in most countries. and it's probably one of the most recent treatments available specifically to IPF. And antifibrotics are essentially medicines which aim to slow down the progression by slowing down the process of the scarring in the lungs. So they can be very, very effective, and they will likely form a key part of your treatment plan. And it's very, very important that you speak to your doctor if you've been diagnosed, or very, very often, there's so much changing in medicine every single day and that when you were diagnosed, there might not have been something available for you. And if you've been lucky enough to live a couple of years without treatments, it's so important to keep touching base with your doctors to see if there's new stuff that's become available, because very, very often, new stuff has become available from the time you were diagnosed. So very important. So that's a good thing in terms of at least we're making changes and significant progress in terms of access to treatment. And then other things obviously include oxygen therapy. And that is obviously putting patients on oxygen where it's necessary, and as well as pulmonary rehabilitation, which I think, again, through COVID, we've all realized is super important. And that's things like chest physio, it's making sure that you can expand, the breathing exercises and all of that stuff. So oxygen therapy, I'm sure, as you know, is to provide supplementary oxygen to help you breathe more easily. And it just keeps the oxygen in your blood above a certain level, which reduces breathlessness. And it improves your fatigue, etc., because obviously your body's generating, you've got more oxygen moving around your blood system, which obviously makes you feel a ton better. So that's very, very, oxygen therapy is really, really helpful.
And that's a therapy that you can do in the comfort of your own home.
But most of the time, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting it through, I would say medical aids are much better in terms of approving oxygen therapy. You don't necessarily always get access to the portable machinery and stuff like that, and carrying around a gas cylinder can become quite cumbersome. So for patients that don't necessarily have the means to get those portable, machines in place, it becomes quite difficult because you are reliant on being near a plug point. And as we sit here with no lights, we know that can be very frustrating. But absolutely. And I think oxygen therapy really, really makes a big difference to patients. You can physically see the relief, from the time from being off oxygen to being on oxygen.
Yeah. And then pulmonary rehabilitation. So
pulmonary rehabilitation is generally a combined program of both education and monitored exercise designed for people with lung diseases. Like I was saying, it's stuff like teaching and counseling on things like physical conditioning, understanding what exercises you can do and can't do, and what sort of fitness exercises you should do. It's breathing exercises. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's it's like a big tube that's got a little ball in it, and you've got to blow to keep the ball in the air. So like your continuous output of air lifts the ball up and keeps it in the air. So that's one of the ones that people often do. They can also assist you with things like anxiety and stress and depression management. So even breathing exercises and those sorts of things really, really help in terms of maintaining good mental health. They can provide you with advice and support in terms of your diet, and obviously general education about pulmonary fibrosis. And something I think it's important to mention while we're speaking about diet is that many of our patients who get diagnosed battle with reflux. So gastrointestinal reflux is obviously, when your stomach acids come back up, and then they kind of spill over into your chest, and that gives you that like burning sensation and an irritated cough as well. So a lot of our patients get investigated for reflux. Many of them have reflux, and that's a contributing factor to their pulmonary fibrosis. But aside from that, you have to treat that, because that will be an irritation factor for anybody that has, chronic lung conditions. So diet is very, very important, not to eat stuff that's overly acidic, and, to concentrate on eating foods that are supportive of a reflux diet.
No, absolutely. I can imagine that. I can just imagine the discomfort on top of already struggling with your breathing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously the benefits of pulmonary rehabilitation include things like obviously decreasing the symptoms of the pulmonary fibrosis, because you're kind of almost stretching out that scar tissue. And for
Yes.
those who made the last webinar, the physio was really, really giving me some good tips and tricks there. But you're obviously stretching out that scar tissue, which makes your breathing more effective. But it also helps patients function better on a day-to-day basis. And again, it reduces that anxiety and depression. And I think that that's very, very important.
No, for sure. And in terms of IPF progression, so of course, if you are on your antifibrotic medication, it does slow it down a lot. But what happens in a case where you are still progressing?
So I think firstly, it's important to realize that no one can, there's absolutely no way of predicting how fast things will progress, and there's varying factors. You could be doing really, really, really well on medication, etc., and pick up a severe lung infection or something like COVID that could then, move you along the path much quicker. So the rate in which IPF can change can happen over time. Some patients notice very few changes in their symptoms, other patients experiencing like rapid decline. And it's not really understood why some people's disease progress faster than others. And this is why research and stuff is so important. But yeah, with the new treatments that are available, people can certainly live longer. And I think that their quality of life is much better.
No, absolutely.
And whilst the treatment can never reverse the scarring, because scars are there, you can't take them away.
You can't, yeah.
I mean, and that's the case with everything. You can even go for fancy like laser therapies and stuff. You can still always see a scar. But at least it stops more scarring from developing, or it kind of, it slows down the progression of further scarring. And
yes,
that's what's helpful. Yeah.
Okay. And let's just go into acute exacerbation a little further.
So I think that this is one of the things, the acute exacerbations are one of the indications that your condition really needs to be relooked at, and that you should probably go for a checkup if you haven't already. And this can happen. It's like when you notice small changes in your breathing, but there's obviously a bigger risk of more complications furthering down the line. So an acute exacerbation is essentially a sudden and rapid worsening of symptoms. So, you could be feeling fine today and feeling terrible tomorrow and really, really battling to breathe, and that would be considered an acute exacerbation, and you should seek immediate help for that. But things like, having a high temperature, and this is always something that anybody who battles with chronic illness always needs to have in the back of their mind. You have a high temperature, you might be coming down with a chest infection, or you might be experiencing a flare-up or something like that. And it's so critically important to not wait. Rather get checked out and have someone say to you, look, don't think that this is anything serious. Then presume that it's not something serious, and then really, really battle to deal with the aftermath of that. So I think it's critically important to always make sure that you have those kind of things checked out. And, doing things that you can to reduce your risk of acute exacerbations as well. So making sure that you follow up your appointments, try and avoid affections as far as possible. So, when COVID was happening, kind of don't go hang around at big parties. Go for your regular seasonal vaccinations. Avoid people with active chest infections and those things, practicing good hygiene, washing your hands regularly, and treating chest infections and the likes quite early is crucial. Obviously, again, because of the limitations in that scarring, you can't afford to put your lungs under any additional pressure. And yeah, just generally, try to maintain a healthy lifestyle and do absolutely everything possible to keep yourself as well as possible. But most importantly, if you're experiencing a sudden worsening of of your symptoms, obviously, jump on it immediately and go seek help as quickly as you can.
I was actually just thinking when we went through the points of avoiding infections, keeping up with vaccinations, washing your hands regularly. I think that's something that COVID has potentially helped us with, because I think we're all more conscious of that now, and not only for ourselves, but to protect those around us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's now commonplace. If you're feeling a little off, you've got a cough or whatever, you notify those that you're meant to be meeting with that you're not feeling well, and everybody's happy for you to tune in remotely. Or, those things are so critically important for those that are vulnerable in our communities. And I think we can be grateful that COVID has taught us a little bit of compassion in that regard. And I think for the patients who are so desperately in need of relying on others around them to protect their own health, like, honestly, I think we're really lucky that we've had the experience that we've had to be able to just guide us along. So you're 100% correct there.
Yeah. Okay. So if your symptoms worsen suddenly, keep calm and alert someone nearby so they can contact your treatment team. If your symptoms are severe, you or someone close to you should contact the emergency services. So
Yep.
I guess in this case, I think when you do struggle with a condition, you do always have someone, contact details close by, or people close to you who know who to contact in case of a severe symptom or something in a situation like that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's almost contraindicative, right? Because if you're battling to breathe and you're feeling like your breath's being snatched from you, I think it's very difficult to keep calm. But ultimately, the more you stress, the more you panic, your heart rate goes up, you start hyperventilating, and it just makes it a whole bunch worse. So, do everything that you can to, I always say to people, when you're healthy or when you're having a good day, try and map out the plans for the really, really bad days. So have a plan in place for in an event of emergency. Are you just pushing a number on your phone and that person knows that they listed as your emergency contact? Have you touched base with your local like community security or community what's the word I'm looking for? Like not like your homeowners association, but like your community associations, your neighbor, somebody like that, that you can send an alert to in the event that you need help, but brief them on what you might require in that situation, because it can also be very, very scary and overwhelming for them. But if you've maybe mapped it out, or you keep, like a file or something, we always recommend our medical cards that we print specifically for patients. That kind of gives a lot more information to be able to treat you properly. But I think if you've provided that and you've done that, it makes it a lot easier for people to come and assist you and obviously provide you with the services that you need in that time. And I know for many patients, particularly chronically ill patients, they often feel like they're a burden because they're so heavily reliant for day-to-day tasks. So they almost don't want to bother people with these sorts of problems, but it's really, really important that you do.
No, absolutely. And I think the loved ones around you, they just want the best for you, so it doesn't matter.
I know. I think patients who continuously feel like they're having to abuse that, it makes it really, really difficult. But just know that they, like you said, they do love and care for you and they want the best for you.
Yeah. So this is a topic that I am very interested in hearing more about, is the benefits of a healthy mind. Because I think we are very lucky to live in an age where our mental health and well-being is such a priority for everyone. And I think the stigma around it has decreased significantly. So in terms of the benefits of keeping a healthy mind for IPF patients, let's go more into that.
Okay, so firstly, what I want to say is, I think for patients who are progressing naturally, as the diseases progress, you often lose function. And with losing that function, so, you might be able to be walk independently and then you can't. You might be oxygen free and then you become oxygen dependent. You might need to rely on people a lot more to be able to get you to the bathroom or into the shower, etc. And I think that those patients experience a really, really real sense of loss. And it sometimes is like your personal independence, it impacts the relationships around you and you become very, very overwhelmed, and it is exceptionally hard. So we've got to acknowledge it. And I think it's always important for caregivers and family members to acknowledge and allow patients to have bad days. as we all do.
Absolutely.
You can't be expected to be strong 100% of the time. But then obviously at the same time, you've got to realize that, you've got to do everything you can to make the most of the existing situation. So some of the benefits of having a healthy mind is that you feel confidence in yourself, you accept yourself, you don't judge yourself, you're not unrealistic, you're not completely hard on yourself, you set reasonable standards for yourself. And if it's a case of having a hard conversation in your own mind, saying like, okay, this is what it is, and unfortunately, this is no longer my reality, and this is it now. This is what it's going to be. I think when you get to that point of acceptance, it really makes things a lot easier. But it also helps you.
Sorry, if you go from living a very active lifestyle, and then your body doesn't allow for that anymore, it has a huge effect on you. So to set realistic standards, I think, is a really important part.
Absolutely. And then also acknowledging that your mental health has a significant impact on the relationships around you. So maintaining a positive, kind of positive mindset helps assist your relationships. And that goes a really, really long way. If people love you for who you are, not necessarily for how active you were, or for the things that you did for them, etc. So it's really, really important to be open and honest. And like I said, have your bad days, absolutely. But I always try and encourage patients to not try to have 2 bad days in a row, because I think that's when, when it's 2, it can become 3, it can become 4. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you've had lots of bad days in a row. So have the one, but then the next day kind of push yourself to move through it and do everything that you can to swing that mindset. And then obviously, coping with the stresses of daily life and managing everything is overwhelming already, but really, really critically important in terms of surviving the uncertainty.
No, absolutely. So now we've given all the benefits, and it's all good and well to have the benefits of a healthy mindset, but maintaining a healthy mindset is where the challenge comes in.
Absolutely. So, and also, like, how do you do that, right? Because I mean, I think even healthy people sometimes don't have it together.
Of course.
And like I said, we all have bad days. But I think one of the things is to talk about how you feel. Doing absolutely everything you can to make sure people understand what you're going through, how you feel about it. Having someone who's there to listen and understand can make you feel so much better. And I think that's where support groups are so vital. So for anyone listening, if you doesn't have to be IPF, but whatever chronic conditions you have, try to reach out to a support group. If you don't know of one, reach out to us and we'll try to help you find one if we don't know any already. But having people who get it is so helpful. And sometimes, you just need like one other person to be like, I've been where you are, who genuinely has. Because I think when you hear that advice sometimes from caregivers or, your immediate family, it feels like a meaningless platitude, like they've just said it because that's the right thing to say in the moment. But when people have actually been through it and they help you through it, it really, really just feels so much better. So talking about how you feel is important, building healthy relationships with people, doing things that you enjoy doing, spend the time with your family, do things that make you happy. It's so important. Sleep is one thing. Without sleep, anybody will go nuts. So trouble sleeping can have serious impacts on mental well-being. And it's important, if you're not sleeping properly, to speak to your clinician about it. So often I hear of patients who have sleep issues, and then when that gets addressed, they like cope so much better. So that's a really, really good thing. And like I said earlier, diet, not only for the gastro reflux, but just in terms of eating well, having a good physical and mental health, having stable blood sugar, you don't get hangry. All those things really, really help in terms of just keeping your mental health. And then physical activity, whilst many of our chronic lung patients battle obviously with physical activities, try to do things like light activities, even if it's something like watering the garden or, that doesn't have to be anything overly, you don't have to run marathons. just try and move around as much as you can. Spend some time in the
Yeah.
sun. Vitamin D is very, very important. And again, do things that you enjoy. Life's too short to spend it all at work, so
Yeah.
do things that keep you happy, whether it be reading a book, listening to music, hitting up whatever's on your bucket list. Don't live with those regrets. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I always like to say that you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, like you say, diet, physical activity, sleep, doing something that you enjoy yourself, you can't help others if you want to, because you're pouring from an empty cup.
Absolutely.
And also, in addition to our support groups, we also do have counselors available for one-on-one sessions if necessary. So that's also a service that we are happy to provide to any patients or caregivers.
Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Or siblings, anyone involved.
Yeah, 100% correct. It's absolutely so important to seek counseling. Our counselors we have free counseling available. So we never want to be in a position where patients can't actually receive counseling simply because of the fact that they can't afford it. So we work really hard with our partners at Bites and Over to make sure that we do have counseling available. But yeah, sometimes you can't speak to your loved ones about everything that you're feeling because you don't want to create anxiety for them, and you don't want to trigger stuff for them as well. So to have your own place where you can go and say what you're feeling is very, very important. Sorry, I have my dog trying to jump up here. You're just going to have to wait. So, yes.
So some key takeaways, just to summarize everything we've been through before we go into questions. Just some key takeaways from the session.
Yeah. So one, that IPF is rare, progressive, and that results in a buildup of the scarring in the lungs. So that's the one thing to understand, how it happens, and that results in the shortness of breath. Also to know that it shares many symptoms with many other conditions, meaning that your diagnosis can take a while, and not to give up. If you feel that you are still lacking a diagnosis or haven't received one, etc., it's really, really important to keep following that up. That there are new treatments available, and you should certainly inquire about them. And also, if you're caring for someone with IPF, remember that there's lots of support and resources out there for you, and that you are not alone, either as a patient or as a caregiver, and that there are always groups like ours to assist you in whatever it is that you need.
Thank you so much for taking us through that. I'm just going to start.
I see we have quite a few questions that have come through.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So, let's just give me 1 second, because he's not going to leave me alone. Hold on 1 second. Okay, but then you can't run away. Come. Oh my gosh. I can't get him. Hold on 1 sec. Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Haven't seen him. Oh wait, you can't, because my black is blurred. Let me just show you what he looks like so everybody can see why he's so cute. So, hello. And I would suggest to anybody, get a dachshund. They absolutely are worth it. All right, so let's go through these questions. My husband has been recently diagnosed. His pulmonologist told him that the medications are not available in South Africa. No, that is not true. They are. So we had to get treatment for him in Spain, where I'm from, which means we need to travel back and forth for medication. Oh, no, please. Oh, please, you got to reach out to us. So Susanna, please get in touch. You can email me directly at info@rarediseases.co.za. And we will certainly put you in touch. The drug that you're mentioning in your question is available in South Africa. Medical aids don't always necessarily pay for it in full. It depends on the case and the criteria, but we do have methods to assist in that regard, and we do have certain programs in place. So don't worry about it. Give it to us, and we will absolutely do everything we can to assist you. And certainly, we obviously don't want you having to travel to Spain to get it all the time, particularly if your husband's not well. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So please do get in touch with us. And I'm so glad that we found you and that you reached out and that you managed to find us on this webinar. Then, what has the experience been like of IPF patients in the workplace where they still have to work? Is there anything patients can do, measure to access flexibility in the workplace, to facilitate treatments and extended absences from work? So I think very, very difficult. I think obviously the one thing that all people could do who are employers of patients with conditions like this is to be understand that they do have different needs to the rest of your teams, and that they might often need to have specific measures put in place where it's people wearing masks around them, whether they are put in their own, office away from the broader crowds, where they are given a parking space that's closest to the door. There's a ton of things that you can absolutely do. And with regards to extended absences, I think that this is one of the reasons so many rare disease patients are so scared to divulge their condition ahead of seeking employment, is because they're scared it works against them. But I can say from personal experience that generally these patients go above and beyond in terms of, giving their absolute everything, and work becomes a really, really good outlet for them in their lives. And as a result of that, they really do everything that they can. So I would certainly encourage people to consider, taking these patients on in the workplace, because they certainly do provide their weight worth in gold. Another question's come through: is the disease hereditary? I'm really sad to say that I'm pity our genetic counselor is not here. There are some elements of it that are hereditary. There are some genetic, there is some genetic correlation, let me put it that way. But to get more information from that, I would sincerely suggest that you pop us an email and that we can certainly put you in touch with our genetic counselor. Then someone has said, for someone who comes from a community that survives primarily on starch, how would you suggest that I eat healthily? Healthy food is expensive. Yep, 100%. Massive challenge, I think. But I think what is important is obviously to try include things like your greens, vegetables, etc., etc. Obviously, you can try work out the time of the day that you eat, whether or not you eat your food with large amounts of liquid, etc., to try to combat those things. And again, I would sincerely suggest that you take up that struggle with your treating doctor, so that they can work around a diet plan that is not only affordable, but is also suitable to the condition that you have. But it is really, really important. Another question. Wow, they're coming through thick and fast, hey? Is there a dedicated support group for IPF, or is it best to join Rare Diseases South Africa? So as Rare Diseases SA, we do have a dedicated ambassador for IPF, and we do have a very, very active little support group on the go. It is still relatively new. I would sincerely suggest that anybody that wants to considers joining. And I also think it's important to understand that these groups are flexible and they are driven by the community. So while we provide the platform, we understand that all the groups are different. So some conditions that impact younger kids or teens function very, very differently to a group that will impact elderly people or, people with certain things. So we're very, very flexible in that regard. And we do find that the support groups really, really work well. Can RDSA help IPF patients connect and support each other? Absolutely. So part of registering with Rare Diseases South Africa has no cost. So anybody with a rare condition can register. You do that by visiting our website, www.rarediseases.co.za. And you click on the join button, and then you can select you're either a patient or you're a caregiver. There's a couple of options. When you complete that form, you ultimately are also completing a consent form, which then allows us to connect you with other patients as part of our programs. And by doing that, you'll be able to access a lot of the support and services that are available to patients. So I would sincerely suggest that you do that. Susanna, thank you. I've seen that you said that you will email us, so that's fantastic, and we look forward to helping you. Another very interesting question. Where can I share my IPF journey to help others? So super cool stuff. We have lots of options for people. We have our Rarity publication, which goes out every quarter, and that is a consumer type magazine, and it's possible to share your story there. You can write a blog on our website that we can share. You can take part in our awareness activities, things like our Rare Disease Day initiative, where you share your rare, you tell other people your journeys. You can become a spokesperson and an ambassador for Rare Diseases South Africa. So there's a variety of different ways to get involved. Some people prefer writing. Other people want to share their story verbally. Some people want to, draw pictures and do artwork, etc. We are open to sharing it all, and it's hugely important, I think, to help. Next question. Are there treatment guidelines in SA for IPF? Yes. There certainly is. There are international guidelines as well. There's definitely best practice in terms of treating IPF. And that's why it's so important that you see the right specialists and the right doctors who are able to assist you in the right way. It's very, very important to be with a doctor that's knowledgeable, particularly when you have a rare condition, because so often, simply because of the rarity, makes it very, very difficult to treat. So if you're with someone who's seen it before, it makes things much, much easier. So 100%. Do you think that there will one day be a cure to reverse the damage? Well, we certainly do hope so. Like we said, we know scarring is really, really difficult, but possibly more can be done in terms of addressing early symptoms, understanding the root cause, because at the moment, a lot of it is idiopathic. I think that will also help in terms of finding longer term treatments. What is the biggest gap currently in the IPF treatment? I think knowledge. Hey, Missy, what do you think?
Definitely. I definitely think so. I think, especially because it is older patients who are diagnosed. And I think that because you expect when you get older to slow down a little bit, feel a little more tired, more fatigued. I think that the misdiagnosis is big. And that's because of a lack of knowledge, especially when you hear from Susanna, who says that her doctor says there's no treatment in South Africa. And we know that there is treatment available. So it's not just with patients, it's with healthcare professionals. It's all over, really, that there is just a complete lack of education.
Yeah, there's a complete knowledge gap. And I think, if we can start addressing some of those issues, from patients knowing their symptoms to understanding their bodies better, knowing it's okay to ask for help, when to go to a doctor, when to push the issue, to, like Missy said, doctors being more knowledgeable about what is available and isn't available, to patients knowing how to advocate for themselves and fight their medical schemes, or, fight their hospital CEOs if they're being treated in the state facilities to be actually able to get these medicines. I think knowledge is always such a critical area to fill. So I'm hoping that answers all of those. I just want to switch over quickly to Facebook. I'm not sure if you've seen anything there.
No, don't worry. I've been keeping tabs. We are good.
Okay, I do see a query coming in. It's not necessarily about this condition at the moment, but if this person is still listening, they are speaking about their children having a glycogen storage disease, and that they are battling to get put in touch with anybody who understands it. So we are unfortunately not based in that country, but you're more than welcome to pop us an email as well, and we will try to refer you back to Rare Diseases International, who might be able to find a group working in that particular country that can assist. So yeah, I think that is it. Wow, look at us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I feel like that was really helpful. I think it was a really great way to summarize the series of webinars that we've had on interstitial pulmonary fibrosis. And I know that I've learned so much because I had no idea about it at all when we first started this series. So I definitely feel better off as well. So thank you to everyone who joined in with us. Carl, thank you so much for your time and sharing all that knowledge with us. And then also,
it's been a really, really interesting journey for me as well, understanding these patients and getting to work with some of them and hearing their stories, and obviously the advisory board that we did, and all of that stuff has really been mind-blowing. And it's really, really sad for me that so many patients feel so desperate and alone, and hopeless, because they just think that there's nothing that can be done when there is. So really want to tackle those, those patients in terms of getting them access.
Yes, absolutely. So for everyone who's listening, whether it's IPF or a different rare disease, RDSA is here for you. We have so many different channels, so many different resources available to help you. So please reach out to us. We are here for you. And then just a final thank you to Boehringer for supporting us on this series of webinars.
Yes, absolutely. We couldn't do it without our sponsors and supporters. So thank you very, very much. Thanks, Missy, for putting it all together. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we really look forward to helping you. If you're out there, you've got something rare, please get in touch with us. We're looking forward to being able to assist you. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.